What is up? It's time to break down what might be the most hyped up Fight Night main event in the last freaking 24 hours, man. Okay? Now, although this card absolutely sucks, it doesn't actually suck. It's actually a pretty good card. Honestly, this is a good Fight Night. And I'm going to break it down. I am going to break it down. We have Clayton Carpenter, which is like a baseball pitcher's name, versus Lucas Roacha. Now, I'm honestly going to go with Lucas Roacha. I think this guy is unbelievable. He's got a really good game until I just saw what he looked like. He looks like this is the type of guy that's honestly, this is like the guy that I KO'd back in the day. He's got the same build. I'm joking. Clayton Carpenter, kind of looks like a lightweight. I'm probably going to go with the 7-0 Clayton Carpenter versus the, freaking pulled out of the street Lucas Roacha. I mean, let's be honest. Listen, Lucas Roacha, I'm not saying this guy's going to be a triple champ. It's possible, but we aren't ready to say that yet. And unfortunately, want to know who, a black and white photo. You just know this guy was just pulled off of the block to fill in for somebody. I'm probably going to go with Clayton Carpenter. I think this is going to be a pretty easy fight. I'm going to go with Clayton Carpenter by KO. But I'll be rooting for Lucas Roacha, and if he wins, you never know. You got to keep an eye on Lucas Roacha. He might become champ. So we'll see. Dan Argueta versus Cody Haden. So Cody Haden straight off the Dana White. You know what? You know what it is? I don't know what did they cut the budget for the Dana White Contender Series? They're wearing, these are like, 2000s hand-me-down basketball shorts that these guys are wearing. I don't know what they did on the Dana White Contender Series, because I see Cody Haden's got the Dana White Contender Series 1-0. So we have two people that are 1-0 right now. There's something off about this. Maybe that's not actually correct, because this is the second Dana White Contender Series person that's 1-0. So everything that I said about Lucas Roacha may be incorrect. Maybe the UFC's website. He's 0 feet tall. Okay, well, obviously now we know that there's something wrong. How tall is Lucas Roacha? Yep, 0 feet tall. So, and he's 133 pounds. He's overweight, and he hasn't even weighed in yet. Obviously, there's some issues. I'm going with Clayton Carpenter. Okay? I just think he's going to get it done. But Lucas Roacha could be, for all I know, 15-1. But, listen, the UFC, they're telling me this guy's 0-0, 1-0. I'm going with Dan Argueta. Okay? I'm going with Dan Argueta. Okay? Now, the reason is because this guy has fought in the UFC before. I've seen him fight, and I've not seen Cody Haden yet. So I am going to just say that, Dan Argueta gets it done. He's a wrestler. He's one of the shorter, stockier wrestlers. You've seen this guy fight. He's got a decent gas tank. He can push a pace. He's got a big blast double leg. And he's got some pop. I'm going to go with Dan Argueta to win this fight by decision. And now we're getting to some legendary bouts. Chris Barnett versus Junior Tafa. This is an easy fight for Junior Tafa. Chris Barnett, he's about 4'8" and 300 pounds. And Junior Tafa is a former Glory kickboxer in the heavyweight division. Chris Barnett has a nasty wheel kick. We've seen him knock people out with a wheel kick. Obviously, he's got pretty good taekwondo. He's got flashy techniques, but Junior Tafa's got good leg kicks, got good boxing, he's got good knees. He's hungrier. I'm going to go with Junior Tafa, to be honest. I think he's going to get this one done. Junior Tafa's going to have the reach advantage. He's probably going to knock out Chris Barnett. So I'm going to go with Junior Tafa. Anything less than a knockout would be a bit of a disappointing performance, let's be honest. The finesser himself versus the dodo bird of the UFC. Nico Price as the dodo bird and Themo Ganbo as the finesser. I think that Themo Ganbo is probably going to finesse himself a first round KO. Now, don't get me wrong. Nico Price, he's very unorthodox. He's got a dodo bird-like physique, and he kind of looks like a dodo bird. Now, that could give you an advantage if you're trying to flap the wings, you're trying to fly up in the air, and maybe hit Themo Ganbo with a flying knee. The issue is, as the dodo birds aged, and eventually they became heavier, and they were kind of weighed down. I don't know if Nico Price at this point in time is going to be able to flying knee Themo Ganbo. Because again, classically the dodo bird couldn't fly. So they were eventually sitting ducks. Now, I think Themo Ganbo is going to go out there. He's just, let's be fucking honest here, okay? Themo Ganbo's 10 times faster than Nico Price. Nico Price is not exactly a jiu-jitsu wizard. And he's not exactly a good wrestler. Nico Price is a fucking marauder on the feet that goes out there and slings hammer fists at 50. When I say 50 miles per hour, I'm talking about baseball speed. This guy goes out there and throws freaking 10 miles per hour punches. You know, he's got the speed of a sloth. And Themo Ganbo is actually fast. I mean, he can wrestle. He's got a good ground game. Dude, this is a case closed. Themo Ganbo wins this fight. And Nico Price, like a lot of Themo's opponents, might just go in there thinking everything's all good. And Themo Ganbo is going to be, you know, shaking his hand, all that. And then the next thing you know, he's going to ambush him. I think Nico Price might actually have a chance here. Now, the thing is, Themo might go in there and underestimate him. Again, there's not many dodo birds around, but the last few may have a fighting spirit. And Themo Ganbo might just get done up by Nico Price. Now, I am actually going to go with Themo. Nico Price is too slow. He's too slow. He used to be a beast, Nico Price, but, you know, he was never the fastest guy. He lost a little bit of speed. Now he's like one of the slowest guys in the UFC. It's going to be an entertaining one. It's going to be an entertaining fight. Themo Ganbo, I think, is going to go in there. I think he's going to get a KO first round. If he doesn't, I think he can mix in the takedowns and get the win there. So there's a way for him to win on the ground, on the feet, whereas Nico Price's way to win is by making it a gritty battle. And I just think it's a matter of time before he gets caught. Let's get on to the next one. Jonathan Pierce versus Patsabatini. Jonathan Pierce lost his last fight against Onama. And then Patsabatini, of course, got knocked out by Diego Lopez. So, you know, Patsabatini and Jonathan Pierce are kind of, to be honest, they're kind of the same archetype fighter. They're like the, you know, there's like 10 fans that were hyping up Jonathan Pierce. And there were 10 fans that were hyping up Patsabatini. There were people that were saying, I don't know, man, Patsabatini, he might actually beat Diego Lopez. And then I picked him to beat Onama, but that's because I was convinced by the Jonathan Pierce fans. And when I say fans, you know how it is. They latch on to the most random fighters. It's like Patsabatini, they latched onto him because he shot a couple of takedowns. Jonathan Pierce, they latched onto him because, you know, he was able to shoot a couple of takedowns. It's usually just guys that shoot a couple of takedowns. People hype them up and say they're the next Khabib, even though no one was saying that about either of them. But you get my point. These guys had hype. They've kind of lost it. I'm going to go with Jonathan Pierce. I think he's just going to be too big for Patsabatini. Patsabatini has the frame of a bantamweight. He has the frame of, he's not skinny. He's not, you know, he actually is lean, but he's got a bantamweight-like frame. You know what I mean? Whereas, like, there are other guys like Jack Shore. Jack Shore moves up. He doesn't have the most bantamweight-like frame, but he just refuses to put on muscle. He just refuses to put on muscle. Patsabatini has the mass. I just think he's a little bit small for this division. I don't think he's meant to be a featherweight. Whereas Jonathan Pierce, he's going to have a frame advantage. He's going to have a strength advantage. He's going to have a range advantage. And, you know, Patsabatini's bread and butter is grappling. Jonathan Pierce's bread and butter is grappling. You know, it's possible Patsabatini could go out there. He's going to be stronger than Jonathan Pierce. You know, he's short and stocky. And maybe he's going to be able to utilize that to kind of just, you know, power through Jonathan Pierce. But I just think Jonathan Pierce, he's, you know what? I was about to say Patsabatini by, you know, lighter weight class advantage, but he's actually not from a lighter weight class. That's the issue. He's not actually from a lighter weight class. So I can't pick him on lighter man skill. I'm going to go with Jonathan Pierce. I just think he's going to be a little bit stronger. Both guys are good grapplers. I just think Jonathan Pierce is a better grappler. So let's get on to the next one. CJvarara versus Ramazan Tamirov. I'm going with CJvarara. Like, I usually pick... CJvarara is one of those guys where it's when in doubt, you pick CJvarara. Okay? CJ Vergara is basically a simulated fighter. He's a CPU fighter. He seems like it. Listen, I'm sure he's actually, I'm sure he's a great guy. I'm sure he's a good fighter. But at the end of the day, let's be honest. Let's be honest. If you're an MMA YouTuber, you know what I'm talking about. If you're a hardcore fan and you look at the cards, you watch fight nights, you know what I'm talking about. CJ Vergara is always, no matter what the week is, no matter what the day is, this guy's going to be on the prelims. This guy's going to be on a fight night. CJ Vergara fights 20 times a year. And his record doesn't change. This guy could have 40 fights next year. His record's still 12-5. I don't know what it's going to take for CJ Vergara to break out of this, I guess, cryogenically frozen state in his career, but he needs to. And he needs to get a KO. Okay? And he's literally coming off of a loss, so that doesn't help that much. But, CJ Vergara, I'm going to go with him. 0-0. Ramazan Tamirov, this could be the worst pick of the year. Ramazan Tamirov could literally be the next thing. He could be Shavkat Rakhmonov 5.0 for flyweight. But I'm going to go with CJ Vergara. When in doubt, you got to pick CJ Vergara. He's just one of those guys, he's good enough on the feet to be able to get the win. He's got flyweight skill. He's not one of these. He's good enough to be in the UFC year after year, continuing to be on these cards. So you got to pick him because obviously this guy's not lost every fight in the UFC. Do you remember if he's won or if he's lost? Not necessarily, but he's been in the UFC. And in order to keep that job, you got to at least win some. And these are the guys where, he usually beats. But then again, Ramazan Tamirov, he has the OV. He's got the Ramazan name. And those combined can make for, literally a future champ. Okay, or a hype train. And hype trains usually get past the first fight. So it's a dangerous matchup. But I'm going to go with CJ Vergara. There's some doubt we're going with CJ Vergara. Jared Gooden coming off of a KO versus Chidi Njokuani, who I believe got a decision win in his last outing. I'm going to go with Chidi Njokuani. I'm going to go with Chidi Njokuani. I think that Jared Gooden, fair enough, he was able to get the KO last time, but I'm more impressed with Chidi Njokuani striking. He's got really good body kicks. He's got good leg kicks. And he's got the reach advantage. What is the reach? 80-inch reach versus 77-inch reach. He's got the reach advantage. I think he's learned his lesson against Mikhail Oleksiejczuk not to just go out the gates looking for the finish instantly. There are moments in fights where Chidi Njokuani just starts to slow down and can't really get momentum back when he starts to slow down. So it's possible that Jared Gooden wears on him. I just don't see that happening. I think Chidi Njokuani is going to tire out later on in this fight, but I think he's going to at least outstrike Jared Gooden early in this one. But I'm going to go with a 29-28 for Chidi Njokuani. He'll slow down. He'll gas out. His gas tank is always never that good. But yeah, I think he's going to get this one done by decision. Josh Fremd versus Abdul Razak Alhassan. Yeah, I'm probably going to go with... I honestly don't know. This is a tough one. Josh Fremd, the only thing that I really remember from Josh Fremd is just losing fights. Whereas Abdul Razak Alhassan, we know he can win. I'm going to go with Abdul Razak Alhassan. All right. He's going to be the guy that's more powerful. He has, we always say, he's a black belt in judo. But when are we ever seeing that? We never really see him do any crazy hip tosses. We don't really see him shoot takedowns very often. He had a bunch of back of the head shots. That was the last one, right? It was a bunch of back of the head shots. Disqualifying shots. Yeah. I think Abdul Razak Alhassan wins this fight. I think he's going to KO Josh Fremd. I just don't think Josh Fremd is dangerous enough. I feel like in order to beat Abdul Razak Alhassan, you have to either have crazy pace, or you have to be exceptional somewhere, or you just have to be really powerful. Josh Fremd is not really exceptional on the feet. He's not an exceptional grappler, and he's not very powerful. So I just think you got to have at least one of those in order to win. I think Abdul Razak Alhassan is going to be able to win. At least he's got a lot of power, and he's fast. So I think he's just going to be able to knock out Josh Fremd in the first round. I'm going to go with the first round KO. Daniel Rodriguez, coming off of a loss to Kelvin Gastelum. That was an amazing fight. Versus Alex Morono, who's coming off of a loss to Nico the Dodo Bird Price. You know what? I'm going to go with Daniel Rodriguez is obviously going to win this fight because he had a decent performance against Kelvin Gastelum. It was a close fight. And even though Kelvin Gastelum's not the best, listen, he's pretty fucking good. Like, there have been more impressive Kelvin Gastelum performances than crappy Kelvin Gastelum performances in his last 4 fights. You know, Kelvin Gastelum's fight against Chris Curtis, Kelvin Gastelum's fight against Daniel Rodriguez. Those are good performances. This isn't the Kelvin Gastelum of 2022, 2021 that we thought had completely fallen off. No. Kelvin Gastelum is a pretty decent fighter. I picked Daniel Rodriguez based on lighter man skill. But I just think that Alex Morono, again, if he doesn't get a guillotine, he doesn't have great wrestling. He's a little bit slow. He's a little bit clunky. You know, if you're in there having like a sloppy fight with Nico Price, then I'm not picking you to beat Daniel Rodriguez, all right? There's just no way. Daniel Rodriguez is going to outbox him. He's going to mess him up. He has the reach advantage. He has the power advantage. He has the speed advantage. He's going to easily win this fight. I'm going to go with Daniel Rodriguez by a KO. I'll say it's going to be a second round KO from Daniel Rodriguez. Okay, pretty dominant fight. You know, I just think Julia Pastri is going to absolutely, you know, show Cory McKenna what's what. All jokes aside, I'm gonna go with Julia Pastri just based on the facial expression, to be honest. Cory McKenna looks like someone that the UFC hired to model the gloves and the UFC kit that's never actually fought. Whereas Julia Pastri, you know, she looks like someone that's fought. So based on that, I'm gonna go with Julia Pastri, okay? I think she's going to get this one done. She has more experience. Cory McKenna, where's she from? Wales, Brazil versus Wales. There's a lot of decent fighters from Brazil. You know, we've seen a lot of tough cookies from Brazil just go out there and TKO people. She looks like she's stronger. I mean, she probably is. So that's huge in women's MMA. If you have a serious strength advantage, you're probably going to have a speed advantage. So I'm going with Julia Pastri. Okay, she's in shape, so she's going to be able to win this. She's probably the stronger fighter. Grant Dawson versus Rafa Garcia. You know, to be honest, Grant Dawson's always been a bit of a weird case because, you know, obviously this guy's the missing link of the UFC. And, you know, the curious case of Grant Dawson is always something to think about because at the end of the day, Grant Dawson's always kind of been a bit of an enigma. Now, what I mean by that is he's always been one of those guys where, you know, he is sort of not always in the discussion. He's not always in the convo. But he needs to be in the convo because every now and then Grant Dawson, he'll go on his missing link tour where he seems to have dropped off the face of the earth. And then he appears on a fight night and you're thinking to yourself, how is Grant Dawson going from fighting Bobby Green to Rafa Garcia? And he's coming off of a win, too. It doesn't make sense. Okay? Grant Dawson wins this fight. The UFC is probably going to give him Court McGee. Okay? And if he wins that, they're probably going to give him Nico Price. Grant Dawson needs to go out there and he needs to get a first-round submission. And he needs to absolutely beat the shit out of Rafa Garcia. If Grant Dawson goes out there and gets 30-27, I don't know what the UFC is going to do, but they're not going to give him a bump up, unfortunately. Okay, now I know we're messing around. We're calling Grant Dawson the missing link. It's because, again, he's just like one of those guys where, you know, 21-2 and you're still fighting Rafa Garcia. Like, fair enough, he lost to Bobby Green, but that's kind of crazy. The UFC really doesn't like Grant Dawson that much. And, like, listen, he's not the most entertaining fighter. But he's a really good grappler. He's got phenomenal takedowns, extremely good entries, very fast with his entries. He's got a really good back take, great rear naked choke. He's got amazing control. He's got amazing pace, good pressure, decent ground and pound. Yes, he's a little bit boring, but it is what it is. Like, this guy is a good fighter. He's a sick fighter. Honestly, the way he got knocked out by Bobby Green was insane. I couldn't believe it. Bobby Green never knocks people out with one punch. I think Grant Dawson's going to dominate this fight. I hope he gets a finish because, again, he is a good fighter. I actually like Grant Dawson. I'm a fan of Grant Dawson because, you know, he's a hard worker. And at the end of the day, he's just one of those guys, you know, in the background, and he's freaking working his butt off, and he's getting Rafa Garcia matchups. And, you know, listen, this guy's winning. He goes in there, he wins. And do I want him as champ? Not necessarily, but I want him to be someone that wins, dude. I root for Grant Dawson. I root for Grant Dawson. Okay? Until he's fighting my favorite fighters, of course, which he is not fighting yet. You know? He's not fighting them yet. He fought Bobby Green. I'm a fan of Bobby Green, too. He got knocked out. But I want Grant Dawson to win. You know, and you know, it'd be kind of funny if he became a champion as well. It'd be kind of hilarious if Grant Dawson became a champion. I would root for him. So shout out to Grant Dawson. I'm picking Grant Dawson as objectively as possible. And I mean that. Listen, he's going to take down Rafa Garcia. He's going to absolutely ragdoll him. Maybe not destroy him and finish him. I hope he does, because then he would get a bump up in competition. But and I think we're going to see a little bit more urgency from him, because if he doesn't do that, then even if he continues to win, you know, he could get cut, which is crazy to think about. But I think Grant Dawson easily wins this fight. He's got good takedown entries. He's been able to out-grapple higher levels of competition. He's going to win this 30-27, dominant showcase, ground and pound, taking the back of Rafa Garcia, slick entries. He's going to win this fight, 14 minutes of control time. Let's get on to the next fight. The Iron Turtle versus Brad Tavares. This was a matchup that had been made and it was canceled. And I picked Jung Park, and I'm still picking Jung Park. Now, although Brad Tavares has phenomenal takedown defense, and Jung Park, one of the best parts of his game is the fact that he has really good grappling and he's got great submissions and he can choke you out, take you down pretty easily. A big part of his game is canceled out. But I still think Jung Park's going to win. I think he's going to beat up Brad Tavares on the feet, who is coming off of a brutal KO loss. And Brad Tavares, known for being pretty tough, got put out badly against Gregory Rodriguez. Had a bit of a scrap with him, had a bit of a war with him. You know, Jung Park is not as powerful as Gregory Rodriguez, but I think he's pretty good on the feet. I think he's got a really good jab. The only time I've seen him struggle recently is against Andre Muniz, surprisingly, because we don't think of Muniz as like the best striker, but Muniz has a really long reach, and he was making it difficult for Jung Park to get to him. But Brad Tavares does not have a long reach. Jung Park has a really crispy jab. I think he's going to be able to beat up Brad Tavares. He's going to be able to put pressure on him. And don't be surprised if he TKOs him up against the fence. And that's actually what I think is going to happen. I think Jung Park is going to have a bit of a scrap with Brad Tavares. It's going to be competitive. He's going to shoot takedowns, get them denied. But I think as this fight goes on, Jung Park has really good pressure, really good pace. I think he's going to get to Brad Tavares. And I just think he has some more miles in the tank. And I think he's going to be able to, you know, start to take over as the fight goes on. So either a late TKO up against the fence or a 29-28 decision victory, maybe a 30-27. Either way, Jung Park's going to get this one done. And by the way, he did struggle with Andre Muniz, but he still won that fight because he beat him up badly on the ground. That was a robbery. On to the main event, Tatsuro Taira versus Brandon Royval. I'm going to go with Tatsuro Taira, okay? I think his striking has improved enough to the point to where I think he can not get KO'd by Brandon Royval. Now, Brandon Royval, yeah, he's knocked some people out, but he's knocked people out that don't have a chin, that aren't very tough. He's knocked people out with the perfect shot. Unless he flying knees Tatsuro Taira with the pitch perfect shot, or Tatsuro Taira gets Grant Dawsoned and then just can't take a simple punch. I don't think Brandon Royval is going to beat him up badly on the feet or TKO him. I think the difference maker in this fight is the grappling. Brandon Royval is a decent grappler. He takes a lot of risks. He's got a good submission game, but I just think he's at a disadvantage when it comes to strength. I find that Brandon Royval, when he fights people that are really solid at grappling, he kind of gets muscled around a little bit. Even though he's taller than most people at flyweight, he's not very strong. And I think that Tatsuro Taira, who is strong for this division, who also has incredible jiu-jitsu, and I think he's got better jiu-jitsu. He's extremely dangerous. His submission game is nasty. He's undefeated. He's got to have a ton of confidence from that. He's at least getting better on the feet to where he's not just a sitting duck anymore. I think Tatsuro Taira is going to muscle Brandon Royval around in the grappling. I think he's going to have the strength advantage. And I honestly think he might choke him out or just beat him up on the ground and win a dominant decision. But I'm going to go with a submission for Tatsuro Taira. I don't know with what exactly, but Brandon Royval takes a lot of risks on the ground. And I think that's going to come back to hurt him in this fight because, again, Tatsuro Taira is a submission expert. And on the feet, Tatsuro's got a little bit of pop as well. Royval outstriking Brandon Moreno, that was really impressive. But Brandon Moreno was on the back foot. He was not really imposing his will in that fight. And that's the issue. It's like Moreno still looked decent with his technique. You know, he was hitting Royval with some good overhands. But he just wasn't letting his hands go, and he wasn't moving forward. He wasn't imposing his will. He was just waiting for the perfect counter shot. Tatsuro Taira is going to stand in the center of the octagon. He's going to hold his ground and wait for his moments to close the distance to get a takedown. Or he's going to push forward, put pressure on Brandon Royval, and he's going to, duck under a punch or something like that. He's going to take the fight to Royval. And I just don't think Royval is going to have someone in front of him that's like not imposing his will, where he can just like pepper at range a little bit and just win on volume. Little pepper punches, little tic-tac punches, basically. And I think Tatsuro Taira is going to be able to deal with it. So I'm going to go with Taira. I'm going to go with Taira by a second round submission. I think it's going to be competitive early, but Royval is going to lose a little bit of steam in the grappling, and I think Tatsuro is going to get him out of there in the second round. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Until next time.